Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective and the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with the biblical worldview. If you've been listening and you like the show, I'd encourage you to hit the subscribe button or leave a review. Again, that'll let others know the show's worth checking out and listening to, and it'll help us spread the word and serve our mission to make a difference. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us spread the word. Today's extra credit version of the Clearly Christian Podcast is a deeper dive into the chalkboard points from our recent conversation with Dr. Greg Miller. He's the president of Malone University in Canton, Ohio. Well, we talked about the business of education and the impact of the changing American workforce. And now for some further thoughts and questions, let's go ahead and bring in our show producer, Bryan Lefelhoc, and we'll talk a little bit further about what he might have thought of that episode and answer some questions there. So, Bryan, welcome.
Hi, Cy. Thanks for bringing me in here, and thanks for that episode with Greg. It's fantastic to think of someone who really gets what you understand, too, which is that business and ministry and education are all part of it. He said in the show, no margin, no mission.
I love
which
that.
was a great way to think of life. Like, we can't just operate a nonprofit without any money. We're not here to lose money, he said.
Right.
And,
we're not for loss. That was a great
loss.
comment.
We're not for profit, but we're not for loss. And let's talk about that a little bit. He talked about the high cost of education and the sticker price of higher education, sometimes $40,000, $50,000, and yet the net is down like $13,000. And he almost mentioned it like we have to play that game. He didn't say that, but there's a real cost. And there's a stickered, an advertised cost. Yeah. Is it like that at the K-12 level, especially now with vouchers? And what do parents need to know about the cost of a private education in today's day?
Yeah, it's a great point. Yep. And I just talked about this yesterday with another school board who was wanting to wrestle with that same idea that, for us, all of us at K-12 level and at the university level, now the margin's not as big, of course, at the K-12 level because we don't have those kinds of expenses that he does. But we're forever trying to figure out what does it actually cost us to educate a child. You know, the state of Ohio says, hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. And it can be, the average cost per pupil in the state of Ohio for public schools is $17,000. And I think, school districts go all the way up into the 20s and some are more or less and things like that. So we're always trying to figure out as well at the K-12 level is what is it actually costing us to educate that child? And then what tuition do we want to charge? Because we try to be tuition driven and you'd like to say, boy, we're going to only charge what it cost, and whatever it cost us, that's what we're going to charge. Well, typically, again, you have a lot of factors to look at and say, what can your local economy take? What's the socioeconomics in your area? And then, of course, really what's realistic. And so let's charge that number. But we do have to consider, obviously, what it's going to cost. And so there's a gap, for all private schools. Typically, I think I read recently 98% of private schools in our country, whether they're religious or not, have a gap between what it cost and what they actually charge. And so they go out there and they fundraise that difference, or they look for other revenue sources. They might run businesses on the side, or they might run, like I said, different types of educational organizations. You might start a daycare, or you might start a before school care or after school care, other ways of bringing in revenue to kind of make up that gap. So at the college level, it's a huge gap. At the high school level, it won't be so much. For instance, in our school, we know the voucher pays about $8,400 to $8,500. I think with the last time we ran the numbers, we're spending per pupil, maybe a little over $10,000. And so we know that, okay, I've got to fund that gap somewhere else, whether that's other sources of revenue or bringing in donations or something like that. What you don't want to get into is, you've got this huge gap in this budget every year, and you've got to go out and fundraise to meet that gap. And when you don't meet that gap, now you have a hard time paying bills. And that's the nature of private education that people don't realize.
Let's talk about this from a parent's point of view. A parent with a young, kindergartner, first grader, second grader, they have a free education available to them, free and adequate, or whatever the term the government uses.
Free and appropriate, yep.
Free and appropriate. When they think, I can't afford a private school, what do you urge them to look at or to do? Not necessarily the worth or value of it, but here's the dollars and cents, mom and pop. here's what you need to know. What do you tell them?
Yeah. If this is a mission fit family and they're going to do the same thing at the college level, they're going to try to make it happen for you. And we are already building in scholarships and financial aid. And like Dr. Miller said, we have a lot of donors out there and people who give to the school because they know it's expensive, right? They know you probably can't charge what you need. So we're forever trying to help subsidize families that are right fit families to be here. So it's not you're not buying a used car, so to speak, but at least go into the negotiations, right? And go call them up and talk to the admissions counselor. And we would say the same thing at Mansfield Christian. Give us a call. Don't just look at that price and say, wow, it's $8,500 in high school. I could never afford that. Well, you do have the voucher, of course, that's going to help you, and it's income based. And so you might get 85-90% of that covered by the state of Ohio. And then you might get the balance covered by internal scholarships that the school offers or other financial aid that reduces that greatly. So don't let that sticker shock get to you, because the school knows it's out there and the school is prepared to handle that. So you at least want to engage that conversation.
Yeah, you won't be the first person that's asked the question, what does it really cost you, or can I afford it, right? And you want to help those people.
Especially if you have more than one child. Yep, exactly.
So Dr. Miller also talked a lot about trades, and it was a very interesting conversation about trade schools and the mission to bring up Christians, and can that work together? He shared a poignant story about a nurse that had a Christian perspective and how she was able to serve people in hospital in a very unique way, and maybe in a necessary way that she wouldn't have otherwise. How do you see trades, which have typically in Ohio been through specific schools at the K-12 level? How are you dealing with that? Because it's an important thing for the workforce of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great story that he mentioned as well, COVID patients and the nursing. I love that because it really drove home exactly what you're talking about. And I've been thinking about this for years. And so years ago, I kind of brought that to MCS and I said, listen, we have to enter that area as well, because I saw this coming years ago. And so I said, what can we do at the high school level to prepare our K-12 graduates and to prepare our kids for this same way? So we said, all right, what are the 4 most common college majors? And they were STEM-related fields, which all things, science, technology, and that can be manufacturing, that can be construction of houses. That doesn't have to necessarily be, graduate school engineering students. That can be all things, computer science, things like that. STEM-related fields and medicine especially were 2 way out in front. And then business was popular, and then also ministry as well. So I said, all right, how can we breathe into this from a vocational trades angle? So we started what we call the Mansfield Christian Career Academy program. So for your last 2 years of high school, if you want to major, or you think you want to go into, not even at college, you think you want to go into a career in STEM-related fields, medical fields, business, or ministry, you join our Career Academy program, and we'll tailor your last 2 years of high school around that profession. So what we'll do then is we will hook you up with people who do that job locally in our area who are believers, and then we'll connect you with them for internship experiences or apprenticeship experiences, and we'll set up your school day so you can be released to go spend time with them. Then we'll bring in those people from those professions to speak to you on a regular basis to tell you what that job's like and what you need to do to prepare for it, whether it's college or not. And then we'll start adjusting some of the actual classes that you take to prep you for that career. So your STEM class will look a little bit different if you want to take STEM as a career, or you want to take it for computer science, or you want to take it for even manufacturing, or I just want to own my dad's construction company someday. Well, I'm going to tailor some of your STEM classes then along those lines. And so we're going to make it really, really unique, because what's driving it, just like Dr. Miller said, is I want to teach you how to do this from a biblical worldview. So if you want to be a nurse, I want to teach you how to be a Christian nurse who does that from a biblical worldview while you're still in high school. And then you can make a great informed decision if that's what you want to do with your life and with your calling. Even if you say, I just want to build homes, or I want to be an electrician or a plumber or something like that. Can you do that from a biblical worldview? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can impact the culture as a plumber or electrician, and not just because you're a Christian, because it's how you see your work and your calling and how you serve humanity. And you could be a major player in the success of this industry. And we want you to move the needle as a believer, because as he said, society needs these these kids as believers, whether they're serving the Lord in trades or whether these are, traditional white-collar jobs or not. So that's what we're doing at MCS to build into that very same thing. And I know one thing that's going to be around the corner for us, and I mentioned it briefly in the show, because I think this area needs it, is we're going to introduce some sort of agricultural component, because there's lots of farming families that we have, whether it's livestock or plants. There's lots of, like I said, big high-tech farms, and they need sophisticated training, and these people are industry movers, right? And so we want our kids to experience good training there and not say, hey, I need to go to the local JVS to get my agricultural training because you don't have that in Christian ed. Oh, yes, we do. And we can teach you the significance of doing that from a biblical worldview. So I love these ideas, and I think it's past time that we get into this market.
And you're echoing his thoughts where he said Malone should not exist or does not exist without the purpose of teaching a biblical worldview without training in Christ. And that was a ministry perspective. And that's kind of what you're talking about here. You're offering these opportunities for a ministry perspective, but they're also serving, in your words, education and the idea of running this place as a business, making sure enrollment is high. So you've got, and he appreciated your comments about putting those three together: business, education, and ministry. He attributed that to you. He hadn't heard it put that way before. I think he'll be using that in the future. Tough question for you, Dr. Smith, though, because business, ministry, and education are all extremely important. You can't have one without the other. But which is most important? Which comes at the least sacrifice to the others? Where do the others have to take a step down so that the first can go on? It's an impossible question, but if you had to rank them, how would you do that?
Yes, and exactly. And I struggle with even how you phrased it, which one takes a step down, because you want to put them, like you said, you want to put them all up there, and you don't want one to consider, it seem less, because like I said, if you fumble any of these, you're in significant trouble. And one thing I didn't mention, from the outset that I could have, was a lot of those Christian schools that started, like Mansfield Christian in the 60s and 70s, they didn't make it into the 90s and even into the 21st century because they fumbled one of those three things. They didn't, deliver with educational excellence, right? They couldn't demonstrate the effectiveness of their mission. They didn't have those nursing stories like what he talked about. They weren't exactly sure if their mission was making a difference in the lives of kids. And so they like I said, they couldn't show it to the customer. And then third, probably most prominent, is they just were operated, or they were launched with that whole charity and philanthropy mindset. And they underpaid their staffs greatly back then because this is a quote-unquote ministry, and it wasn't sustainable. So they couldn't handle the business model either. So like I said, if you fumble any one of these things, you're in trouble. But you do probably have to go ahead and put me in a corner and make me answer it. Yeah, I will say, listen, you did start as a school. So you do have to keep that in mind, right? You exist and you're licensed by the state of Ohio to provide an education for kids. And so the state says, yep, if you meet all those chartering requirements and you make sure that you do a sound, you give a sound education, then you can be a chartered school and give out a diploma on behalf of the state of Ohio. So you do have to remember that you are an educational institution first. You just have the luxury of saying, yes, this is how we're going to do education. It's not going to be separated from our mission. So it's 1A and 1B, if I could say that, is you don't get to exist without saying we have to be a great school. We have to deliver with excellence as a great school. But we get to define what that looks like. And, 1B is this is our mission. We didn't go to the state of Ohio in 1961 and say, please approve Mansfield Christian School as a school apart from 1B, which is that mission. Make sense?
It does make sense. And I think Dr. Miller would agree that it has to be a business first to allow everything else, or an education first to allow everything else to work. What do you think is the future? He mentioned how many schools there are in Ohio at higher education level. What do you think the future is of higher education? And let's talk specifically at the Christian side of things. It's a tough market in higher education. Do you have ideas on that?
It is, and I do, and he's exactly right. There's too many, and I hate to say that, but there are too many colleges right now, especially even private Christian schools that are vying for the same customer, and the interest in going to college is down throughout the country because of exactly what we talked about, the trades, not only the trades, but also just jobs that I can get in this industry or in the economy that don't require a college degree. And they may not even be trade jobs. They just don't require a college degree. And the company is more likely to say, you know what, I can pay for you to get a certificate in a few things. And, you know, I'd like to have you now because you're really good at 18 or 19, then wait for you to go to school, get into debt, and you're age 22, 23. So let's bring you over. So I do think, yeah, he has great cause for concern, as do most Christian colleges, because they are really going to have to get innovative, like he said, which is not what they're used to. But there is a limited number of people out there to keep these schools afloat, and they're going to have to be really, really good, which some of them are, and they're growing. You know, I think of Cedarville just continues to grow year in and year out, and they are really going against the tide of Christian colleges in Ohio. But they're delivering missional excellence, and they're innovating by leaps and bounds every year. And so the consumer says that or sees that, and they make those changes. He wants to do that same thing at Malone, and I know the others want to, but they're going to have to really make a concerted effort if they're going to survive in this economy. So again, great questions, Bryan. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me today on the Clearly Christian podcast. And I trust that now you know more about the business of education and the impact of the changing American workforce. It's been an important topic today. And again, if you like the show, let us know by following or subscribing. Hit that like button. That would be great to let others know the show's work checking out. It certainly would make a difference. Remember, the only way we're going to turn things around in our country is to increase the number of people who hold a biblical worldview. And the greatest hope to get there is Christian education. Again, I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this has been Clearly Christian. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.